Hello friends, welcome back to the second part of the learning series for the Automotive Quality Management System Standard Iatf 16949 2016 for the requirements related to clause 8.4 for the control of externally provided processes, products and services. We have understood the requirements of clause 8.4.1 in the part 1. For those who have not yet seen it yet, I recommend that you go through part 1 as well after this video to make yourself more comfortable with the standard requirements. In part 2, I will be covering the requirements for the type and extent of controls that needs to be defined and adhered, and also the requirements of statutory and regulatory requirements. So let's start. Clause 8.4.2 explains the requirement for the type and extent of control. This clause requires a close analysis on how the external providers affect your success. The external providers should not have adverse effect on the organization in delivering conforming products and services to the customer. There are 4 sub-requirements in defining the type and extent of controls. The first requirement is the organization shall ensure that externally provided processes remain within the control of its quality management system, which is a but obvious requirement to be met. The second requirement is define both the controls that it intends to apply to an external provider and to the resulting output. There are 2 things in this statement. First talks about the control at the external provider, for which you need to decide will you audit the supplier or establish a performance goal of the supplier. The second part focuses on output, whether you will be inspecting the product or testing the product in the lab. The third requirement is take into consideration the potential impact to meet the customer and applicable statutory and regulatory requirements. This is to protect you from any legal issue. The second consideration you need to take is the effectiveness of the controls. The internal controls which the external provider has provided internally. The more robust and proactive controls, the better you are, for which you need to evaluate the external provider on their internal controls and the KPIs. The fourth requirement is determine the verification or other activities necessary to ensure it meets the requirement. This talks about verification of the output, and the type of verification will be based on the criticality of the product. IATF 16949 2016 further elaborates the requirement of types and extent of controls. It states the organization shall have a documented process to identify the outsourced processes and also in defining the types and extent of controls to verify conformity of externally provided products, processes and services. You need to state how the outsourced processes are identified, what are the criteria for outsourcing, and how the suppliers and their risk are evaluated. The second requirement is the process shall include the criteria and actions to escalate or reduce the type and extent of controls and development activities based on the performance of the supplier and assessment of product, material or service risk. Clause 8.4.2.2 explains the requirement of statutory and regulatory requirements. It states the organization shall document the process to ensure purchase products, process and service conform to the current applicable statutory and regulatory requirement, and that needs to be adhered for the country of receipt, country of shipment and the customer identified country of destination if provided. The second important requirement is the special controls which the customer has defined for the products with statutory and regulatory requirement. So the organization shall ensure that they are implemented and maintained as defined, including at the suppliers. Means you have to cascade all those requirements to the supply chain. By this we have come to the end of part 2. See you soon with part 3 in continuation of this learning series. Till then, keep learning and keep sharing.